sessions. Got that, Jim? And on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Jim Leahy, our executive director, for all of his hard work. And please remember, if you're planning to attend most of the series, you may consider and should really consider joining the Connecticut Recyclers Coalition to get additional membership benefits throughout the year, including reduced fees on our session wrap up, and that'll hopefully be in person in June at the end of the session. Other housekeeping notes, please keep your cameras off and microphones muted to improve the experience for all participants. And if you have a question, put it in the chat, and then Jim will curate these questions for our panelists. With that, today's session, we will explore the issue of extended producer responsibility, EPR, with a specific focus on those items that are challenging and difficult and hard to handle in the waste stream. Really fortunate this morning to have two distinguished panelists with us today, and they have significant experience in this area. Our first panelist is our own Jen Heaton-Jones. Jen is the vice president of the Connecticut Recyclers Coalition. She's also the executive director of the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority, serving 12 municipalities and almost over 238,000 people in that area. And she has extensive responsibilities helping those communities properly recycle, and she'll tell us more about the challenges she's facing. And most notably, she's the chair of the Connecticut Product Stewardship Council. Second, we have Jonathan Murphy from Murphy Road Recycling. He's been with the solid waste and recycling business for over almost 27 years in Connecticut and Massachusetts. And of that time, he has managed landfills, transfer stations, recycling facilities, C&D processing facilities, and collection operations. As the director of operations for Murphy Road Recycling, he oversees the operation of the company's post-collection facilities that include 4 MRFs, 4 C&D processing operations, and 10 transfer stations. So we clearly have some great expertise on this panel. I'm looking forward to hearing their presentations and again, hearing what questions you might have for them. So with that, I will mute myself and pass it over to Jen.
Thank you, Lori. I'm going to share my screen if Jim would allow me to do that. Let's see, I can do it now. Okay, thank you. All right, good morning. Thank you, Lori. And since we are recorded and for the record, the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority is now 14 member municipalities. We had 2 additional municipalities join the authority in 2021. So good morning. My task, as Lori had said, is to discuss the difficult to manage or handle materials that have an impact on municipalities and our waste stream, and such as some of these that are in this photograph: gas cylinders, lithium-ion batteries, flares, smoke detectors, and fire extinguishers. But given the short time this morning, I will focus on gas cylinders and batteries. Okay, so let's start with cylinders. Cylinders can be difficult to manage and recycle. Residents who utilize our local recycling centers, transfer stations, or HHW collection events want one thing: they want to get rid of their stuff. The problem we have is how to manage them. Many of us do have vendors who will take our 20-pound tanks at our local drop-offs, but for a fee. And although there are some free programs for good tanks, there's almost always a fee for old rusty tanks, spent tanks, and there's no one, at least in our area, that will collect and transport the 1-pound single-use propane tanks, also known as DOT 39. In order for a scrapyard to take them, they must be devalved or punctured twice with a hole before discarding into a scrap metal container. And our transfer station operators and our municipal managers do not want their employees puncturing those holes in the tanks, and neither does OSHA. We have few outlets. Nearly all scrapyards don't want them. They pose a risk and a danger to their shredding equipment and employees. Even the smallest amount of propane will create a significant explosion. We have a litter issue. Thousands of cylinders are left behind in parks every year. Connecticut Deep estimates 10,000 in Connecticut state parks. and Yosemite National Park collects 20 to 25,000 one-pound cylinders a year, and they truck them more than 2 hours to a facility that takes low-grade hazardous waste. They are a cost burden on municipalities and the state. Yes, we can get rid of 20-pound tanks at our local drop-offs for around $2 or $5 per unit, but when they come into our HHW events, they run us about $10 per unit. And single use are charged by the box or a drum at approximately $200 to $500 per drum. And probably the most important issue is they're dangerous. Cylinders are often hidden in the recycling stream and are an extreme danger to material recovery facilities where they can explode. So this is what a 20-pound cylinder looks like after it has exploded. This came out of Mira. And I know some of you have already seen this video, but it's important to show. This is the impact of what happens at a material recovery facility here in Connecticut. And then this following series of videos is from Mira. Okay, so let's move on to lithium batteries. I think that you can see the impact of propane cylinders. So lithium batteries, they too are difficult to manage and to recycle. They must be collected separately and should never enter the waste stream. Lithium batteries, common in consumer electronics, have posed a serious problem for our waste industry. When they are damaged, they may present a fire and or an explosion. When they are placed into our waste or recycling stream, they are often damaged from either a compactor, heavy machinery, or from the processing equipment at the material recovery facility. Those physical impacts then cause the battery to have a chemical reaction and it catch on fire or even explode. And that causes millions of dollars of damage and endangers the lives of our waste workers. There are some barriers for consumers and residents. Some batteries cannot be easily removed from products such as toys or even medical devices by the consumer so they can be properly managed or recycled. This is a photo from Waste 360 of a MRF on fire. The cause was a lithium ion battery. And then I'm going to show you this video. Hopefully it will work. This is a video from Eco Maine's recycling facility. It shows a waste hauler tipping mixed recyclables onto the tipping floor, and a fire breaks out, which is later discovered, which was a lithium ion battery. What's important to know in this video, and what you can see here, it's difficult to extinguish the lithium fire battery. They attempt to put it out several times. And I'm not going to show the entire video, but you get the idea. That it's difficult. Okay, so what's the possible solution? EPR. Extended producer responsibility is an important tool that can be utilized for these difficult to manage materials. Producers share the responsibility and the burden of end-of-life management. They create a plan that includes collection, transportation, and disposal, and the program covers the cost. A stewardship organization is created to manage the program, like we have for paint care and mattresses. The plan should incorporate and take into consideration design for the environment. How can batteries be better designed to have less risk? How can products be better designed to allow consumers to remove the battery? The plan must have performance targets that create accountability. The plan must have collection convenience standards. It must be easy and convenient for our residents to dispose, or they'll take the easy way out, right? Which is just put it in their trash or their mixed recycling stream. And every program should have an education and outreach plan. It is the most important component to getting the generator, our residents, to understand and be aware of the dangers and disposal options available in order to do the right thing. Most of you should be familiar with paint care. These same elements are incorporated into that law. The paint care EPR law requires paint companies to develop and manage paint stewardship programs, make it easy for consumers to recycle unused paint, and relieve much of local government's financial burden. Regarding batteries, battery take-back programs are a key strategy to prevent environmental impacts, return valuable materials to the circular economy, reduce greenhouse gases, and they create recycling jobs. To be effective, they must be sustainably funded and available year-round to everyone. And despite voluntary industry programs to collect and recycle batteries like Call to Recycle, only 12 to 15% of rechargeable batteries and a much smaller percentage of single-use batteries are being recycled in the US. Since financial contributions from battery producers to the recycling program are voluntary in many states, the current program also enables free riders whose products are recycled at the expense of other companies. That's where EPR would come in to make it a more fair playing field. The most successful battery EPR programs prioritize consumer convenience in collection locations, accept both single-use and rechargeable batteries, and have performance goals for collection and recycling, and include significant consumer outreach and education. The state of Connecticut worked on batteries in 2014, but it never had legs to move forward despite the detrimental impact to the waste stream. And regarding cylinders, I did help introduce EPR for cylinders in 2020. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it didn't have a hearing. In 2021, it passed nearly unanimously out of the Environment Committee, but didn't make it to the House floor. I am optimistic that we will see a committee bill this session, as Worthington Industries, who is the largest US manufacturer of propane cylinders and who also owns Coleman, has agreed to an EPR policy. It is now in the hands of our co-sponsors in the Environment Committee leadership to see the bill reintroduced. Thank you, and I will hand it over to Jonathan.
Well, hopefully everybody can hear me. Thanks, Jen. Great job. You would have think we coordinated on our presentations because mine's basically the same as yours. So I'm going to kind of just not pump mine up at this point and just kind of review from a MRF operator standpoint that these items, batteries and propane tanks, the small cylinders, cause real issues for us every day. Those videos Jen show are really extreme, but even smaller issues or smaller fires erupt on a daily basis as these products are brought to us. The lithium ion batteries really take very little compaction or pressure to cause a fire. The cylinders in a baler or in a facility when they're run over can explode and they're very dangerous for our employees, for our facilities, and very hazardous. So we're very concerned with these and we need to try to figure out how to get them out. We preach it to our customer base, our municipalities about not putting these materials in, but people don't know what to do with them. So they end up in our facilities on a daily basis. So what we're really looking to see is how we manage them. And so from Murphy Road's perspective, we don't have the answer if it's a legislative or a regulatory response to this, but these items are real issues for us on a daily basis. So MRF should not be receiving them. We should not be getting batteries or cylinders or any other hazardous type materials as they pose a risk for our facilities. But yet we get them every day. So I ask that we try to work together to come up with a way to get these out of our waste stream so we can properly manage our facilities safely every day and keep our employees safe and keep our facilities safe. So Jen, you did a great job. I even had the same videos, so I don't want to spend too much time showing the same stuff. So that's all I had.
Okay, well, thank you. That was a record timing, however, underscoring the issue, the problem. Are there any questions, Jim, in the chat regarding these two products?
There are none yet. Jen, since we have more time, do you want to touch on the other products you mentioned?
Yes,
Are they likely?
okay,
Are they likely? Are they likely to be considered by the legislature as well?
So the Connecticut Product Stewardship Council has not raised fire extinguishers or flares. We did have smoke detectors tied in with the EPR bill last year for cylinders. It also included tires. My understanding this year, the propane cylinder tank will stand alone. Policy for EPR will stand alone. If smoke detectors and tires are going to be introduced, it will be introduced separately. Flares do pose another difficult issue for municipalities. There are no drop-off programs for flares, except for HHW. So if you're in a community that only has one drop-off event a year, so out of an entire year, you have one day to bring those flares. Unfortunately, because it's not easy and convenient, our residents put those types of items in the waste stream. Again, a flammable item. And they also pose some environmental issues and risk. And there's different flares. You have marine flares and road flares. They pose different types of management issues. And they're very costly for our municipalities to handle, and not all HHW vendors will take them. So that's another issue that municipalities face with flares. In regards to smoke detectors, they're difficult to manage because it's very unclear what a consumer is to do with it. They can send it back to the manufacturer, but many United States postal offices won't take them because they have radiation, although it's known that by the time the smoke detector is spent and it no longer works, much of the radiation that is used for that unit is dissipated. But again, difficult and confusing for the consumer. We do tell them to put it into their general waste stream. It goes to the waste to energy plant. But again, very confusing for the consumer when you have a unit that's mostly made of plastic and they want to understand why they can't recycle it. And often, and I'm sure Jonathan can agree with me, if it's made of plastic, consumers or residents put it in the recycling bin. They don't care what it is. It's just plastic. It must be recyclable. If it's metal, like a propane tank, it must be recyclable. I can put it in my mixed stream. So that's why I do believe extended producer responsibility, having the manufacturers play a part of the responsibility for the end-of-life management comes into play. They have to help us educate the public, the consumer. They have, just putting a recycle label on a product does not help us. It confuses the consumer because they just automatically believe, oh, I can put it in my recycling bin. We need better labeling, and perhaps if EPR isn't passed, at least labeling laws should be passed and how to better educate the consumer on end-of-life management.
Thank you, Jen.
We have our first question. If Connecticut gets EPR for propane, munis could provide both drop-off and scheduled curbside pickup with disposal, not collection, with fees covered by industry. Please lay out what the experience might be for residents and municipality.
I do not believe you'll see a curbside collection program for propane tanks. Again, you don't want to confuse the consumer that it's okay to put it at the curb. They will continue to be drop-off programs. The EPR legislation that's being proposed is to basically take the existing infrastructure of municipal drop-off locations and retail locations for refill and change the financial burden from the basically municipalities to the manufacturers and the producers on the collection and transportation, but it is designed so that there is a actual collection program, there's a fenced in area, there's a protocol on how to collect them, there's a consistent method of pickup and transportation by a licensed vendor, and it is an opt-in program, so municipalities can opt in or opt out. They don't want to participate, they don't have to. But most importantly, again, the propane cylinder industry will help to educate the general public and the consumer on what to do with the end-of-life management of that propane tank when it's spent. If it's a single-use container, it will have some type of education material attached to it to say, do not put this in your recycling and waste stream, bring it to your local drop-off. Hopefully we'll see advertising such as we have for Paint Care on billboards or Pandora or Spotify or wherever it is to have a much more broader outreach to the general public. What are experiences in other states? We are the first state to introduce EPR for cylinders. Although Canada does have the orange drop program to provide convenient locations for drop off for cylinders.
If I can just interject, we agree. Labeling, education, it goes a long way. Getting people to understand what to do with these items is going to help get it out of the waste stream. The Recycle CT, What's In, What's Out program has been fantastic. It hits a lot of people. It does a lot of education. It's an easy thing for people to refer to. Some kind of a program like that for people, even if it just refers to them on the packaging for the single-use item or the battery, to where to go to get rid of these materials or where to send them or what to do with them would be very helpful to keep them out of the waste stream that shows up at our facilities.
I'd like to make one comment related to CJ's question about curbside disposal. So as Jen said, this is pretty much working off the framework we already have for other EPR programs. But, you know, I like to think about things as an opportunity, and perhaps if there's a creative opportunity for a future business, somebody on the line here who has experience in that, I don't see why we can't explore that option, or somebody can't explore that option. I'm not saying in legislation today, but for CJ to mention that and his experience with residents in a municipality, there might be an entity out there that is interested in doing that. So while the legislation or the framework that Jen mentioned doesn't have that component in it today, doesn't mean it can't be an opportunity to work together in the future for another potential creative business. On that note, I see a few other questions coming up. Jim, did you want to handle those, or? Okay. I will.
They're there for everyone. So does I can
Well,
read it. Maybe
sure,
this
and I just quickly address Lori's, yes, the curbside. We would hope that maybe someday we could even see our HHW vendors helping participate in curbside collection, and perhaps that would be the avenue in which propane tanks would be even collected at the curb.
And even the folks that they deliver them today, they're delivering them. There's a mechanism in place for that, hardware stores and all those folks to, they're dropping off the tanks, putting that into the same cycle. So that's why I mentioned opportunities. There's so many, I think, possibilities to try to address that one issue. And again, maybe that framework works for other items.
So maybe this is a strange question, but what is a citizen supposed to do if they come across a pile of old tires in the woods or on the side of the road? How large a problem is this? Should it be given more priority? Do our neighboring New England states have a program already?
There are no tire EPR programs in the United States. There is a program in Canada for tires. Typically, a pile of dumped tires, illegally dumped tires on private property is the owner's responsibility. And but there are some programs available for like litter cleanups, and some tire companies will provide containers for disposal. There is a website that you can go to managed by Firestone, but it's not as easy as one would hope that it would be for residents and local community organizations that do cleanups to be able to utilize. I hope that answers the question. There's a question for Jonathan.
Yeah, I see that. In reality, those are the two biggest items for us of focus that cause hazards. So the batteries and the cylinders that we're seeing every day that are causing problems. There really aren't other. We're able to manage most every other material that comes in. We have outlets for them and able to sort them out. But the biggest concerns for us are right now are lithium ion batteries and the propane cylinders.
Jonathan, are you also seeing fire extinguishers coming through, or?
Not to any large extent, no.
Okay. Thank you.
In regards to CJ had said something about how they sometimes get requests from residents to pick up the cylinders because many residents don't have cars. It's interesting. I had a resident call regarding a propane cylinder from the city of Danbury, and we were having a drop-off event, an HHW drop-off event in New Milford, several towns over. And I told the gentleman on the phone, oh, we have an HHW event coming up next weekend, just bring it to New Milford. And his response was, I don't have a car. I can't get to the event. So I can relate to that, CJ, you're right. We need better ways or easier convenience to be more local for the resident or consumer. There's another question. Is it likely that tires will be addressed this session? And please talk more about how to manage tires. So,
And the subsequent question, is it possible to get tires onto an EPR list?
so my focus this year is the cylinders. I think that there is language that was introduced. We introduced it. Connecticut Product Stewardship did introduce language for tires because it is such a short session. In my conversations with leadership, they advised me to focus on one thing, to not bog down the session. And if I wanted cylinders to be passed, then focus on cylinders. I think if you want tires to be reintroduced, you need to get a sponsor who will reintroduce the language from last year. And if not, I think we can focus on that in a longer session in 2023. But we do need to manage the issue of tires for municipality collection and easy and convenient for residents, so they stop illegally dumping them because of the cost of disposal. CJ asked if there's regulations which affect curbside pickup. The regulation is on the DOT 39, the single use. That's where the regulation kicks in. And you are supposed to be a licensed vendor if you collect large quantities of cylinders.
Okay.
Jim, do you want to read this comment, or do you want me to read the comment and the challenge with existing tire collection?
Sorry, I have to keep unmuting. From CCE, the challenge with existing tire collection and recycling is that there are no accountability measures, i.e. end uses of that material. An EPR program for tires can ensure that rubber does not get used in children's playgrounds / athletic fields, etc.
Yeah, so tires are an interesting, it's a management issue for collection, cost issue on collection, and then the end of life management of what actually happens to the product when it's recycled and what is the environmental impact of those products. And that's part of the concern with tires. Unlike other products like a cylinder, we know that we can collect the material, we can collect the cylinder, and it can either be repurposed and recirculated, or if it's completely spent, it can be melted down and made into a new cylinder or made into another product that's metal and doesn't have the same negative environmental impact. So there's several layers of difficulty in managing tires. Brian has said recently it's been hard to have a vendor collect tires from municipal transfer station and costs are rising. Brian, my municipalities are having the same experience of the tire vendors, and perhaps that is a conversation we as municipalities could possibly come together and collaborate on a regional RFP. Something I'm considering for our 14 member towns to create more leverage for the collection.
Any other comments or questions?
This is like the half-hour coffee instead of a whole hour coffee.
It wasn't a breakfast, it was just a coffee. Right? It was from Janice, there might be a program to dispose of flares through local police. I believe the New Haven Bomb Squad through the Department of Emergency Management and Homeland Security now has equipment to dispose of flares. Local police can collect the flares and bring to the bomb squad for disposal.
Yes, that is a method in which many other states, particularly Massachusetts, it's how they manage their flares through the bomb squads. They typically bring basically this, it looks like a large safe to an event and collect them, and then they handle them either through some type of incineration or they literally
Blow them
burn
up.
them. Yeah, blow them up.
From CJ, they're trying to get an ordinance passed in Waterbury, which requires tire shops to document where old tires go once they leave the shop. It's to eliminate the practice of unscrupulous tire shops and fly-by-night disposal operations, which dump in the woods. It would seem to make sense for us as the Connecticut Recyclers Coalition, to help facilitate conversation around this issue because it's obviously a significant challenge for folks. I understand Jen's point, which is the legislature can be a fickle friend if you come in with too many things on the same topic, especially when something like propane has been around for a few years, but we should certainly start this conversation.
Tires have been introduced several years in a row. Unfortunately, we just haven't had the legs and the overall support. I will mention that the tire manufacturers had offered last year for the tire EPR bill, a sort of a bill of lading prescription to handle the tires, sort of in place of EPR. Many folks didn't believe that was the best way to be the only way to handle the tires. That just, there's too many times that the tires are handled and often they lose track of that bill of lading. But it's not saying it's not a bad element to have within a bill, but it's not the only prescription to have to handle them, to manage them. Somebody asked how they can help move cylinder EPR forward. My suggestion, well, I'm hoping to have a Connecticut Product Stewardship Council meeting in the coming weeks, but it's always important that you reach out to your local state representative and explain to them your experience with a particular hard to manage material such as cylinders and why you support legislation for cylinders, and ask them for their support in the Environment Committee. And then once it passes the Environment Committee, we need to get it called to the floor. So then you want to continue to get that support so that it can pass in both the House and the Senate, and we can move it on. And if there's a little comment to join and follow the CRC on Facebook and Twitter. Yes, thank you, CJ. And also, if you are interested in extended producer responsibility for hard to manage material, such as cylinders, and you want to join that effort, you can also reach me to discuss joining the Connecticut Product Stewardship Council.
Closing, I think Jen's made some great comments. I think a lot of concern in municipalities is the cost of these types of things. And I think we should not focus on cost here. These are safety issues, and injuries could be happening to our employees at our facilities or on the streets or in the trucks, or fires happening, and firefighters are in danger. We need to not focus on cost. Household hazardous waste days have been happening for many, many years. And I'm sure at the beginning, everybody's concerned about cost, but they've driven down the amount of materials that we see into our facilities of those types of products, fertilizers, paints, aerosols. And so they've really helped, and those costs over time have spread out and people have absorbed those. So let's not focus on cost. Let's try to focus on safety, the best way to do it. If it's EPR, if it's hazardous waste day collection type events for these items, and education. So we really just need to get them out of the waste stream so we can operate safely every day. Thank you.
Well said. Matches the videos.
Thank you. And actually, we have another question. Is there any country managing spent tires in an environmentally friendly way? That question came in from Mary.
Well, we know that Canada has a program for tires, spent tires. And I believe there are other European models, but I'm more familiar with the Canadian.
Okay, thank you. Jim, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments, and I'll move on to the closing remarks again. There we go. I'm pausing. So CJ's asking in Canada and etc. Do we know what happens to the tires?
It's a stewardship program. So the Canadian tire manufacturers, actually, they're American as well, but they collect them just like sort of mattresses and paint, and they are getting recycled, going back into circulation or recycling or fuel, but they are managed through the stewardship program. Many of them, my understanding is many of them actually come back into the United States.
Thank you, Jen.
I'll send a link off to be shared.
So thank you, Jonathan and Jen, for that insightful conversation, examples. Again, seeing those videos time and time again underscore the safety aspect and how to help our residents properly dispose of these items and keep everybody safe while doing so. Just making sure there's no other questions. Thank you, CJ. Yes, it was absolutely a great discussion. Short. We had expected to go the full hour. We'll give you some of your time back this morning. Again, go ahead, Jim.
No, nobody minds getting their time back.
Right. Second, third, fourth cup of coffee at any rate. So thank you again for attending today's session. Thank you, Jonathan and Jennifer, for such great remarks and insight to what to expect. So as a reminder, next week's session, number 3, same time, next Thursday morning, 8:30, please sign up. We'll hear from Frank Antonucci from USA Recycle, Pat Grasso from Urban Miners, and Ryan Cornier from Van Dyke Recycling. And we'll discuss, or they'll discuss, new and emerging technologies that are now being used to address the challenges of recycling glass from the MRF facilities. Please be sure you don't miss out, sign up, and I'm seeing a couple other comments. Just an FYI from Cheryl Baldwin, this year's Connecticut Envirothon is focusing on 1-pound gas cylinders, educating teams of high school students about these challenges. I know everybody can see these comments, but that specifically caught my eye. So there's no other questions or comments. I'd like to leave you with your consideration to join CRC. Get in touch with Jim Leahy on that as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day now. Bye.